Okay, we have a couple of questions. So I
Lovely.
guess you caused some anxiety with there's no records available. So the question is, can we know are the records available when setting up the task?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. So we've just had a meeting today actually about finding the best way to make sure that there are always records available, or finding the best way of flagging when there might not be. And I think one of the things that I did want to say is that if you're setting up a classmate activity, um, and you are going to involve potentially quite a large number of students, or perhaps it's going to go on for some time, it's probably worth getting in touch with us just so that we can be aware that you are planning to do this, and we can then make sure that we do have tasks records available. It's rare to run out of records. We have just had two concurrent large challenges on at the same time. Um, but yes, I totally take the point that, you need to know. So one thing we might look to doing is flagging on Classmate itself the likelihood of having enough records for what you want to do, for the size and the duration of the challenge you want to run.
And very briefly, how do you actually get those? I mean, for Crowd and for Classmate, you do that separately and differently, or where those records come from and how do
Yeah,
they get there?
the records are part of a wider initiative called the Centralized Search Service in Cochrane, where we get them from a number of different external sources through running very large sensitive searches for what we're looking for. So, for example, if we're looking for randomized controlled trials, we'll run a very large sensitive search, which is run every day automatically across a range of sources to identify any potential RCTs. We bring them into the system. Some of them are very, very clearly, obviously RCTs, and we don't need people to look at them. So they go off in one direction. And then the rest will go through into Cochrane Crowd, and it's those that are accessible through Crowd and Classmate.
Hmm. Okay. Okay, let's move on to other questions. How soon can we see the results and accuracy?
Yeah, it's a
Will,
great question. So
will,
now,
will the
almost,
resolver from Cochrane team? Will the resolver from Cochrane team? Not
yeah,
sure
no, I
what they're
understand.
getting.
I
Okay.
think I understand what they're getting at. So one of the challenges that we've had is that when you're running a classmate activity on a task, the task, as I said, is live. It's a real task. We do need that task. So it can be challenging then to present accuracy information in real time, because it takes time to know, according to the algorithm, what the accuracy is. What we've now implemented in the recent version of Classmate is we've made better use of already known records. So we have enriched at various points in the set of results that your students will screen records that we already know the answer. Not easy records, not difficult records, a set of records that we already know is either an RCT or not an RCT, for example. And we use those to generate pretty much an instantaneous accuracy score.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And
That's
so resolvers are no longer, yeah, we used to have to wait for records that needed to be resolved before you got your accuracy. So we no longer need that part of the process.
okay, and we have another question. Is there a link to the website where the recording? Oh, yeah, recording of this will be published. Yes, 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 yeah. We will share the recording. Then the
Definitely.
question is, can we run in a sandbox?
So you just want, yeah, if you just want to have a complete play and not panic that, it's live or anything. I mean, what I would suggest is pretty much what I've been doing today on this demo is set it up and invite yourself and have a play that way so that you can see it from both teacher perspective and from student perspective. If you're wanting to really do a task that uses only known records so that you're not worried that your students will go very badly wrong and create a load of a load of inaccurate classifications, then get in touch with us and we can load in a batch of records for you to play with. But on the whole, I would say you don't really need to do that. I think you can set up a classmate challenge, invite yourself, invite your colleagues who are sat next to you to have a go, see how that works for you. But the agreement algorithm that sits behind every task is designed to be really robust. It's designed to handle errors that are made. That's why it's there. So you don't have to worry too much, even if your students are completely new to this.
So, for example, you won't have the same record shared 4 times within within the same group, right? So that within the same group makes the decision, basically. Is that what
Yeah,
algorithm prevents of doing,
it
or?
yes, you will still have the same record shared within the group, but that's okay. They still have to do the assessment independently and blind to other decisions. And we have tested that the algorithm can cope with that. It is fair to say that when we see assessments that have come from classmate activities compared to non-classmate activities, we do see a higher proportion of records where there is a conflict in the decision. So there is an added element, I suppose, of inefficiency in the system for us, but I think the gains outweigh that slight inefficiency because the gains are about getting people involved, have people having a go, and it doesn't affect the end accuracy of the final classification. So, we're sort of comfortable with how it works in that way.
And how do you explain that observed inaccuracy with classmate participants compared to crowd? I mean, do you have any idea what would be the reason for that?
Oh, I think the reasons are because often a classmate activity using a task, and I've used the word numerous times today as a challenge, is set up as a screening challenge. And when something's set up as like a screening challenge, it's because it's being done in a very time contained way. It's like we're going to do a 1 hour challenge and we're going to find as many RCTs as we can. That
Ah,
is a very different mentality, a very different way to approach a task than, right, students, take your time, spend as long as you like. You've got the whole of the term to do this. So it really just depends on how it's framed. And if it's framed as like a 1 hour, let's see how many we can find. Yeah, we do expect a higher number of conflicting classifications. But as I say, the algorithm is strong enough to cope. There is a downside in terms of more records need resolving. So, of course, we don't want this to be how it's done all the time. But the fact that it was fun, it got people involved, and we ended up with a load of records screened is still the advantages of it.
and how the resolving actually works? I mean, when does that happen and how it's
Happens,
being done?
yeah, happens all the time. So resolver level screeners are sort of our super experts in crowd. Um, And if we've got, for example, we know about a big challenge that's happening, we will put extra effort on the resolving side just to really make sure that as far as possible, we're keeping up in real time with getting those records done. Because it's just a nice thing to know that during that challenge, not only did you create 20,000 assessments, you also actually screened a full 20,000, a full however many thousand records that would equate to. They are done. We don't need to do anything more with them. We're really happy with that. So, yeah, we have sort of resolve effort, but you know, it is a resolver is a special kind of resource, and we don't have many resolvers. So
Mm.
it is important, but a crowd contributor can become a resolver level contributor. They have to do a certain amount, they have to prove certain level of accuracy, but then they can be invited to become a resolver.
And when a record is sent to the resolver, when there's kind of 2 versus 2,
No, that's
is that?
really interesting. Yeah, it's the moment that that consecutive chain of agreement classifications is broken. So if I said RCT and you said RCT, we're all good. But if the third person then said reject, that's when that chain is broken and that record then goes off to be resolved. If I
Okay.
said RCT and you then said reject, and that's all we've got on that record goes off to be resolved.
Okay, so another question, do people's existing weight from crowd still apply in classmate?
Great
I guess.
question. And one that I am going to have to think about for a moment. So if a crowd, yes, if a crowd contributor has already become an expert in crowd, then if as long as they're logging in using their same usual crowd details, that'll be recognized in Classmate. And so the algorithm will adjust accordingly depending on their level of expertise in crowd. A lot of
Um,
very good detailed
yeah.
questions.
Well, I have one more which came to my mind, but do you have anything else that you wanted to cover in your slides, perhaps? Because you did mention you have something for the end.
The only other thing I did forget to show on my slides was the final slide, which I will just share my screen so it's up
Well,
while we're answering the last question. But apart from that, no, I think
okay.
I'm good. But
Okay,
let me just
so
do that.
yeah, okay, so perhaps before you, so is that the kind of the wrap up slide? No, 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 we don't need it yet.
Don't need it
Yes.
yet.
No,
All
no.
right, brilliant.
So perhaps just a question I've noticed that you said that you can add participants at any point. You can re-add them. My question is, what if you add a batch of participants, send the invitation, and then you add new ones, and then you
Yeah,
send invitation. Is that
yeah,
sent just to the new ones, or how that
yeah,
works?
yeah. You can choose. So you can decide just to send the new invitation to the new participants, or you can decide to resend the invitation to everybody, or you can decide not to send the invitation. You've got multiple options regarding sending the invitation.
I've noticed as a micro learning task ICTRP ID.
Yes,
What's that?
that is a task that is about identifying randomized controlled trials from the clinical trials portal, the WHO portal called ICTRP, which stands for International Clinical Trials
Registry.
Registry Portal.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah.
So those then records are taken just from that.
They're just from that meta register. Yeah. And they're a really nice beginner task. So because they come from a different source, they're not bibliographic, they're not from journal articles, they are trial registry records, and they're nicely structured. So you can sort of see um, essentially see the PICO of those trials more clearly than you can for, say, a bibliographical, title abstract record. So they're quite nice as a beginner task.
Um, okay, we don't have any more questions, so I'll perhaps end with one more broader question, which you may or may not want to answer at this point. Do you see any other areas where crowdsourcing could be used to blend these real life tasks and learning? Because this is a particular kind of, I would say, task in a overall process of systematic review production, and which very nicely blends, as you say, real tasks with learning. Do you think
Yeah.
there's any other chance or
Yeah.
opportunity area of that?
Yeah, I really do. I think potentially there are multiple points along the sort of creation of a systematic review where this sort of model could work really nicely as both equating to a sort of introduction to things like data extraction, for example. You could be helping to or assessing the full texts of papers and pulling out sort of key characteristics about the methods of the study. I think there's a whole range of other tasks that could work really nicely with this sort of model that then teachers would be able to get their students having a go at actually contributing to the systematic review process, learning in the process, but then also, actually contributing to a real systematic review.